My tea people, what's happening? Oh, I'm missing the actual tea. All right, got it. So, today is another South American herb. I don't know how I didn't have this one yet, but this is Boldo. It is grown in Chile, and it is something like a bay leaf. Is what I would consider it. As far as the way it's used in cooking and stuff like that. I haven't cooked with this yet, so I can't say for sure, but from what I've read, when used in recipes, it is used something like a bay leaf. It's also an added ingredient in yerba mate. So I imagine that you just put maybe a couple leaves in your yerba mate as something of a flavoring. So not sure what to expect out of the cold brew. I think it's going to taste like medicine, but I'm really interested in this one. I did a little bit of research on it, and so the first thing, oh wow, that doesn't taste bad at all. All right, the first thing about this one is bodine, which is an alkaloid, something that I've kind of been going down a rabbit hole on this past week, are alkaloids. And alkaloids are typically those chalky, sort of bitter flavors that we get in all vegetables, especially green leaves. And those alkaloids, because of that bitter flavoring, means that not only can they do damage to your liver, but they are literally medicine. I think that for the most part, when you ask a human, what does medicine taste like? I think most people are going to say bitter, and that's because most of the things that we know to be medicinal are alkaloids. They are heavy alkaloids, and the more bitter something is, probably the better it is for you in small amounts. This one is not bitter at all. It actually tastes really good. It tastes just like basil water. Yeah, it tastes just like basil. So now I understand how it's used in cooking. I can't imagine putting this in and then eating it, or chopping it up fine and eating it. I don't think it's used that way. I'm pretty sure they're adding it to soups and stuff like that as a flavor enhancer. But anyway, let me keep talking about all the benefits for this thing. So bodine is the major alkaloid on this thing, and all this comes from NIH, which is the U.S. government, National Institute of Health, and they've done studies on this stuff. I've read through some of the studies. I'm just going to talk about just broad stuff on this thing. So the bodine actually, again, it's an alkaloid, and it helps to widen the kidney veins, right? So if you have kidney issues, typically it's because the kidneys are clogged, right? And so this will help to widen those veins around the kidneys. Okay, so that's the one thing. The second one that is not as prevalent, but still a major component of this particular leaf, is called ascaridol. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ascaridol. I'll put links to this stuff in the description if I can. But anyway, so ascaridol is actually the thing that gives the leaf its flavor. And guess what? It expels parasitic worms. Matter of fact, ascaridol is an actual medication used for expelling worms in animals, but it's also used as a medicine in how do you say it? The mosquito virus. What is that called? Malaria. Yeah, so if you have malaria, you can take this stuff, and what it does is it keeps the malarial viruses from replicating. Not completely stop them, but slows them down quite a bit, enough that it's actually used as a medicine in malaria. And I imagine, and again, it tastes good. Tastes good, especially if you like basil. I'll tell you, one of the things that I learned being in South America was adding basil to mayonnaise. Game changer, game changer. Now for the rest of my life, if I'm gonna have hamburgers, if I'm gonna have French fries, I want basil mayo, and I learned how to do it. Just chop it up real fine, and you don't even have to blend it. You can blend it, but you can kind of just stir it into the mayonnaise, and man, it's the best thing ever. It's green, and it tastes awesome. Okay, so, oh yeah, and I found a new word. This is called anthelmintic activity. Anthelmintic activity. Anthelmintic activity is anything that expels and basically kills worms, parasites in the body, and that is exactly what ascaridol does. It is an anthelmintic, has anthelmintic activities, and there's a lot of information, a lot of studies on anthelmintic things. All right, what's the next one? The next one is this was a weird one. 1,8 cineol is a natural monoterpene. And I did not look up monoterpene. I think I will when this is done. But a monoterpene, I know, has something to do with flavor. But anyway, but this thing is actually eucalyptol. So if you ever heard of eucalyptol, which I believe is the major oil component of eucalyptus, that's exactly what this 1,8 cineol is. But it's not called eucalyptol because it doesn't come from the eucalyptus tree. It comes from this particular leaf. The really cool part about this, and this is what really piques my interest. So there are some chemicals that we know can cross, for instance, the brain barrier, right? That gets talked about a lot. There's some chemicals that we know can cross over into our eyes, right? This particular chemical crosses over into the lungs, and it's crazy to think, and I'll probably do a little bit more research on this to get a good understanding of exactly how this works. But literally, when you drink this stuff, when you swallow it, right, it leaks into the lungs, okay? And when it gets into the lungs, it acts as, I was just telling someone the other day, it acts like a mucogen. I forget the actual scientific terminology, but it basically stops the lungs from making mucus, okay? And the reason why that's really important is because people that have asthma, people that have COPD, what's happening is the lungs are being damaged, especially in cases of COPD, the lungs are being damaged, and to repair that damage, they excrete a lot of mucus, right? The problem is that mucus is what makes it hard for you to breathe and can actually kill you in the course of asthma, right? And so, of course, if this is a problem that you have, you definitely want to stop harming your lungs, right? But to keep you from dying, this Boldo, this 1,8 cineol, this monoterpene, eucalyptol, can actually keep you from dying because it can stop the accumulation of mucus in the lungs. And again, these are studies that have been done. These chemicals are actually being used right now for the treatment of these diseases. The difference is, however, is that they have basically taken this particular chemical out of these leaves and only using that. And I'll talk a bit about why that's not such a great idea. Not really a lot of smell on the dry leaf, and I am gonna wash this just to knock off any, maybe dust or something. You never know. I'm also really curious to see what it smells like too. Oh wow, I can smell that eucalyptol, and I mean it is for sure basil. No getting around it. But I've now that I smell this, I've smelled eucalyptol before, and it is sort of a minty sort of thing going on. But more than anything, it's definitely for sure basil. Now, is it Thai basil or whatever the other basil is? I know one is stronger than the other. So whatever the strong one is that one. But I really like it. Like I said, I love basil mayo. I don't particularly cook with a lot of basil myself, but I can see how this is a very easy ingredient to cook with. And that's the reason why I'm so like interested in this kind of stuff, because just imagine, man, if you can simply add a pinch or a few of these leaves or whatever to every meal. I mean, you're doing something that can help with COPD. It's crazy, and it improves asthma. That's another thing, right? I mean, COPD is usually damage taken to the lungs, whereas asthma, you can argue is damage taken to the lungs, but it's damage that maybe you didn't do yourself, right? Because you're born with it. COPD, you did it yourself, or you inhaled some toxic something or whatever. Either way, this is a daily thing that you can add to your diet to help with that. All right, and then the last one is P-cymene, okay? And this is another chemical that is the major component of this particular leaf. Now, here's another deal. These are American government website articles, okay? These are chemicals that's already been figured out, taken out of the leaf, studied. They know exactly what they are, what they do. There's probably more in the leaf that we don't know about. There's probably more in the leaf that we do know about, but isn't large enough to make it any more than a footnote. You know what I mean? But we do know for sure these four things are a major component in what is in this leaf. Okay, so P-cymene, okay, also known as P-cynol or P-isophenol, is an alkyl substituted aromatic compound. This is what makes it smell good. This is used in a lot of essential oils and a lot of aromatic plants has this particular thing. So that basil smell that comes from this P-cymene, okay? Now, what's cool about P-cymene? This is crazy. P-cymene is an apoptosis. An apoptosis. Apoptosis is literally something that keeps cells from dying. It keeps cells from dying. So when you think about the fact that there can be some downside to a chemical in the plant, right? The plant itself has things in it that kind of offset that. And that's the reason why I don't like taking out, I mean, of course, there's always a case for singling out a chemical from a plant or something like that. But in many cases, I'm finding that you want the whole plant. You want the whole plant. And like I said, science, the human population, We on Earth do not know all of the chemicals that are in all the plants. So by taking out one chemical and leaving the rest of it, and only ingesting that one chemical without having the total package of what that plant has to offer. I mean, the other thing is we like this particular plant has been used for at least 1,000 years. At least 1,000 years as a medicine. Like, we know it's medicine. And so to take one chemical out of that and say, okay, we have a medicine, we have something that's safe to take, I think is crazy. Because obviously you're missing something. Even if you don't know what that something is, you know you're missing it, right? There's another theory that says that plants are aware, which I believe. They're alive. They live. I believe that plants, and not believe, I think that plants are no different than us, right? They're alive. They can sense things. They want to live. They want to survive. They want to procreate, and they want to live their best lives, right? And one of the ways they do that is in relationship with the other plants and animals that are around them, right? And there's a theory that says that evolution says that the plants are purposely putting some of these things in their makeup because they know that the animals and the humans that they live around like this stuff, right? And if it's something that's good to us, we will keep it. We will take care of it. We will protect it, right? When you think about a tomato, the tomato has done the biggest trick on, I'll just say, humans ever, right? Because the tomato has gotten us to basically treat it as almost a god. You know what I mean? Not God, but like a highly revered deity, right? First of all, we propagate the thing millions of times over, almost around the world. We treat it like it's royalty. We what do you call it? Fertilize it. We feed it. We water it. We protect it. We do all these things for a tomato plant. So when you think about all of the plants that we do this for, specifically this one that we're talking about, because this has been used for at least 1,000 years, and it's being used today. So just imagine if you had a Boldo tree on your property, you don't think you're going to take care of it, or you're just going to cut it down? No, you're probably going to keep it, and you're probably going to take care of it, and you're probably not going to let anybody mess with it because you know the value of it. And the plant knows that too. And that's the reason why I think a lot of these plants have these particular things in them. Yeah, definitely basil, but a little different, kind of woody, a little bit of mint. I expected the liquor to be darker than this. It's almost clear. It's crazy. It's like water. Oh wow, it's very minty. Oh, very minty. And that's another thing that I've noticed throughout all of these different herbs. They all have this like minty flavor. And I really like mint, but it's weird how they're all minty, all of them. So crazy. So yeah, apoptosis. And like I say, it tastes good. So this is one that I'm definitely going to add to my stash of herbs to drink on a regular basis. This one, but now that I think about it, this might be really cool to add. Ooh. So here's the thing. I do like mint tea, but I think this one is way more nutritious than mint. Far more benefits and taste almost better in some ways. So yeah. Maybe I'll add some things to it. You know, I'm thinking like a hot toddy. Oh, wait a minute. So because this thing penetrates the lungs, if you are sick, if you have a cold, if you have pneumonia like I had one time, and you have a buildup of mucus in your chest, hot toddy, mint tea, some lemon, and some honey, you're golden. If you want to, maybe add some rum or something to put you to sleep. Yeah, it's perfect. It really is. I really like this. And I do want to see what it's like to cook with it. But I don't use basil for a lot of things. Oh, well, spaghetti. I'm going to make spaghetti this week. So when I make my spaghetti, I'm going to put some leaves in the spaghetti sauce and cook it up, and then take it out at the end, because you don't want to eat this. The leaves are just too thick, I think, to eat. But one thing I want to bring up real quick is ascriadol. That's the second thing I talked about. It can be toxic. And the reason why is because when you heat it, it tends to break down into its single components, meaning that it starts out as ascridol. Once you heat it past a certain point, it breaks down and no longer becomes ascridol, and that can be dangerous. And so they talk about what the dosages ought to be. And I did the math on this the other night, and it works out to something like, because they did this in rats, and it was 2 grams per kilogram. So yeah, so the way it works out is I have to take something like 150 grams of this particular chemical before it becomes toxic in my liver. So that'll never happen unless you are making an essential oil out of this. If you're making essential oil out of this, you got to be very careful. But that's any essential oil. Any essential oil is going to be that. Something like a tea, cooking it, unless you're dropping like an entire bag like this in there, like, you're good. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's it. Really happy with this one. I was afraid it was gonna be bitter, but it's not. It actually tastes really good. And I'm gonna keep drinking this stuff. I'm gonna just hit it as hard as I can and boil the heck out of it and get all that goodness. All right, from me to you, I holla.